Tennessee Virtual Statehood Day 2020, brought to you by Blount Mansion, National Historic Landmark, the birthplace of Tennessee, and Historic Homes of Knoxville. Unlock Knoxville's past with our 7 historic house museums.
Hi, I'm Patrick Hollis, Executive Director and Curator of Mabry-Hazen House.
Hi, I'm Kyle Dickson, Executive Director of Marble Springs State Historic Site.
Hello, I'm David Hearnes, Executive Director of Blount Mansion, National Historic Landmark.
Hello everyone, I'm Sam Maynard, Executive Director of James White's Fort, the beginning of the city of Knoxville, Knoxville's first home.
I'm Kelley Weatherley-Sinclair, the Executive Director of Historic Ramsey House.
Hi, I'm Todd Morgan, the Executive Director of Knox Heritage and Historic Westwood.
And I'm Michael Jordan, Director of Marketing and Public Relations at Blount Mansion, Knox County's only National Historic Landmark. Happy Statehood Day! Did you know that June 1st is Statehood Day in Tennessee? That's right. It was on this day in 1796 when Tennessee was admitted to the Union as our nation's 16th state. Every year, around June 1st, the Museums of Historic Homes of Knoxville host open houses. We open our doors to you free of charge and invite you to come inside and see the places and hear the stories that make Knoxville and Knox County such a wonderful historic place to live. Well, this year, we've decided to offer a virtual Statehood Day. We're going to allow you to experience our homes from the comfort of your own. We'll start just down the street here at James White's Fort, which is coincidentally the place where Knoxville itself gets its start.
Well, James White, as a Revolutionary War captain, he came to this area and claimed 1,000 acres, which is part right here at James White's Fort, and settled and started his colony here. Basically, what you see is the 8 different cabins and surrounding wall that's around here. He first settled here. There was nothing else here but wilderness at that time. And then several years later, he established this in 1786 and 1791. They decided they wanted a township here. There never really would have been a state of Tennessee without James White, William Blount, John Sevier, and all our forefather people right there, because of actually James White settled this area, began the city in 1791, and the state began on June the 1st in 1796, and Knoxville's the first capital. All of the historical homes played a role in what Knoxville, Tennessee is today. Here at James White's Fort, we have 8 different cabins, which you will also get a sheet when you do come in that describes each cabin and the artifacts in each one of them. You open, you come and visit the cabins, sit in the courtyard, read your sheets, go back and visit the cabins, and just stay as long as you want to in the open space. There's a big maple tree here. You can sit underneath and enjoy yourself, or sit out in the open sun. But you can see actually how all the people lived in the 1700s and survived. Well, we do have a blacksmith shop here on the property. Blacksmiths were really important.
My name is Jake Easterday, and I'm the blacksmith here at the James White Fort. Most of what a blacksmith would have made at the time would have been things like nails, or chisels, or knives. A blacksmith could turn out 500 nails in a day. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it into a square, and then I'm going to draw out the end, kind of like you're rolling out silly putty. And while it's still red, I'm going to take it over to this called a hot cut. And I'm going to hit it a couple times, turn it, keep doing that until it's almost broken off. Right. Now we have a nail. It's like a tack, very short, but this would be what they would use to build these buildings.
And actually the nails were very rare too. Some people would burn down a building just to keep the nails back in those days, because it was just, everything had to be made. It's all part of our early settlements.
The next stop on our program is my museum, Blount Mansion National Historic Landmark. In fact, we like to say Blount Mansion is the birthplace of Tennessee statehood, because it was Governor William Blount who shepherded Tennessee from a federal territory into a fully fledged state. Blount Mansion is a very special place. It's the only National Historic Landmark in Knox County. That means it's a place that is significant to the history of our entire nation, not just Knoxville and Knox County. William Blount had this house built starting in 1792. George Washington, our nation's first president, appointed William Blount to be the territorial governor. The Southwest Territory is the land that eventually became the state that we know as Tennessee, and William Blount was key in making that happen. Now, when Blount got this job, he had signed the U.S. Constitution for North Carolina. Now, that's a really, really big deal. Only 39 men signed the U.S. Constitution, and there are only about a dozen or so houses that you can visit anywhere in the country that were houses of a U.S. Constitution signer. So this is a really special house right here in Knoxville. Let me show you a few more things outside before we go inside Blount Mansion. In addition to the special place that it holds in our nation's history and in Knoxville's history, Blount Mansion is also really important because it has the only public garden in downtown Knoxville. And you can see there's some beautiful tulips blooming here right now. This garden has been taken care of by volunteers from the Knoxville Garden Club since 1934. So that's more than 85 years that these ladies have volunteered to make sure that we have this wonderful garden here that you can enjoy anytime we're open here in downtown Knoxville. So in addition to being a National Historic Landmark, Blount Mansion is also a wonderful garden. Now here's something cool that you need to know about in the front yard of Blount Mansion. What do you notice here? Lots of windows, right? And they don't seem that different than the windows in our houses today. But when Blount Mansion was built, starting in 1792, this was the only house anywhere around here that had plate glass windows. Most people lived in log cabins or wooden stockades, kind of rough, uncomfortable places that didn't have beautiful windows like this. And when William Blount had this house built, he had to have the glass for these windows brought here from other places, from North Carolina or Virginia. So this was really special. And because nobody had really seen this kind of thing around here, the legend is that Native Americans in this area referred to Blount Mansion as the house with many eyes. And when you look at it, can you kind of see how the windows of a house look like its eyes? Now think about how many things these eyes, these windows, have seen over more than 200 years in downtown Knoxville. A lot of things have happened here, and things have really changed around Blount Mansion since it was first started in 1792. Let's go inside. So here we are in the main room at Blount Mansion. It's set up kind of like a dining room in our houses today. And as you can see, there's a fancy table set, but the dishes are a little bit different than what we have in our homes today. For starters, people used to drink out of these pewter cups. Now they're very pretty, but the reason we don't drink out of pewter anymore is this could give you lead poisoning. So just one of many things that's changed in 200 years in the way we live our lives. Now we're walking into a room that we call the East Wing here at Blount Mansion. It's a lot fancier than that main room, and you can tell that by looking at the walls. Do you see how they're smooth, just like modern walls, and you don't see those individual boards that go up and down anymore? This room has been plastered. That means the people that finished this room added a plaster finish to smooth out the walls. This happened about 10 or 20 years after Blount Mansion was first built. And you can see that the town had more resources, people had more money to spend, and this was a room that was designed to show guests that this is a fancy house, a very special place. Now there are a lot of really interesting things in this room, but one of the most important pieces of furniture is this desk. It was called a secretary, and this is the kind of desk that important people like William Blount or wealthy merchants or judges or lawyers would use to do their writing and do their work. And there's a really cool secret in this desk. I'm going to show you now. Inside this drawer is a hidden compartment. There's a secret compartment in the back. You lift this up and it slides out, and here's a secret tray where you could put important documents that you don't want anybody to find. Slide it back in, close that, looks like a normal drawer, and your secret is safe. Now we've stepped into another part of Blount Mansion. We call this the West Wing because it's on the west side of the house. And the people who've studied this building, the experts think this was actually a separate building that was just drug up and attached to the side of Blount Mansion. But the really cool thing in this room is right over here. Check this out. These are actually William Blount's shoe buckles, his actual shoe buckles that he wore when he was alive. They're pretty fancy, but these are not diamonds. These stones on the outside of the buckles were actually made out of paste. Can you imagine wearing something this fancy on your shoes? Now we're going to leave the main house and go into a separate building. And this is the kitchen. Now, the reason that kitchens were not inside the house back in the 1800s and 1700s is because there was always a fire in the kitchen in the days before microwaves and electricity. So there was always a danger that that fire might get out of control, and it happened often, and houses would catch on fire. So to keep people safe, the house and the kitchen were separated. Let me show you the Blount's kitchen. Now, as I mentioned outside, all the cooking in the 1700s had to be done over fire. So the enslaved people who lived in Blount households, specifically Sal, an enslaved woman, and we know her name because of research that historians did a few years ago. We know that she had to keep a fire going 24 hours a day. It would take hours to get the fire big enough to do what you needed to do to cook the food. And it was so hard to get it going that they just kept it going all the time. There's some other cool things in here to show you. This is actually a toaster. You put the bread inside and hold it over the fire, and you can toast your bread by hand. This is Governor Blount's office. This is probably my favorite building and my favorite room and the whole place. Let me take you inside and show it to you. Inside Governor Blount's office, Governor Blount actually did the work of creating the state of Tennessee. He had to take a census. You know what a census is? It's when you count all the people who live in your territory. Blount took a census, figured out that there were more than 70,000 people here, and that was enough people to make Tennessee a state. So we would no longer be the Southwest Territory, but could instead become the state of Tennessee. So in this room where I'm standing right now, some of the early leaders of our territory and state met, and they wrote the first state constitution of Tennessee. When they finished it and they agreed that it was ready to go, they signed it on this desk. Now, the desk was not originally in this room. It was in another building that was torn down a long time ago. But this is the actual desk that Tennessee's first constitution was signed on. So you could say that this is where Tennessee had its first birthday. This is ground zero for Tennessee history, this desk. And we have it right here at Blount Mansion, and you can see it when you come visit us. Remember how I told you earlier that William Blount signed the U.S. Constitution for North Carolina before he moved here and created Knoxville and started the state of Tennessee? Well, here in this corner of his office, we have a huge copy of the signature page of the U.S. Constitution. And right here are the names of all the men who signed the U.S. Constitution, our founding fathers. And right here is William Blount's signature with the other delegates from North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Kyle, Executive Director here at Marble Springs State Historic Site, and welcome to Virtual Statehood Day. We're here at the home of John Sevier. Of course, John Sevier was a hero during the American Revolution, particularly at the Battle of Kings Mountain. But it doesn't just stop there. He was also instrumental in making sure that Tennessee became a part of the United States. And of course, he was elected to be not only the first governor, but the third governor as well as Tennessee. And he also went on to serve as a state senator as well as in the U.S. House of Representatives. Of course, while he was out making sure Tennessee was thriving, his wife, Bonnie Kate, was here at Marble Springs making sure everything was running smoothly. Come on inside and let's see what she's up to.
Hi, welcome. Please come in, join us, have a seat. Welcome to the Governor John Sevier homestead. I'm Bonnie Kate, and this is our tavern. These are my girls, my daughters, helping out here in the tavern. Now, hopefully you can have a rest on your journey. If you're planning on staying, please let me know. We're preparing some dinner. I've got vegetables out of our garden. The girls are preparing those and cleaning up for the night. We don't know yet how many people we'll have. It really could be anyone. Plus, there's always the occasional visitor that just stops by. You never know. It's quiet now, but most of the time we have our Cherokee neighbors, the fellow Frontiers families will pop on over. This is where a lot of meetings happen. You can play games, talk politics. All of that happens here in the tavern. This is kind of a common meeting area. A lot of entertaining conversations will happen here. We always have a warm fire going. not only to cook our dinner meal, but it's nice to sit and relax at the end of the day and have a glass of ale or just a nice hot tea and just enjoy conversation and spending time with each other. It's also a good place if you have something you want to trade. Maybe you don't have currency because cash is hard to buy. We can't really even accept everything. Being new state, we're not in North Carolina anymore. We've actually gone through the process of becoming state of Franklin and then Tennessee, all thanks to my husband. He played a big part in getting us to be our own state, but we still very much out in the wilderness now. This is pretty remote. You probably won't pass much if you're going any farther west. This is pretty much it.
Now that you've heard from Bonnie Kate about what it took to run Marble Springs, let's go inside our kitchen where our volunteer Fran Brown is demonstrating some 18th century cooking.
Well, welcome to Marble Springs. I could see you out there. Was hoping that you would come on into the kitchen. This was John Sevier's kitchen. He calls his plantation Marble Springs. And actually, he had very little to do in this room, but his wife, which we refer to as Bonnie Kate, her real name was Catherine Sherrill, she had a servant that took care of the cooking for her, so she didn't spend a lot of time in here either. But I'm sure while I've been talking, you've been looking around and thinking, where is the stove? What are they going to cook on in this room? And where's the refrigerator? Well, the refrigerator is right down below the hill there, and it's a spring, and there's a building down there, and so anything cold could be kept there. Now, anything that was freshly baked could have been kept over here in the pie safe. And as far as the stove, that fireplace there works just as well as any stove that you could possibly buy. Now, you're thinking, well, how in the world is that going to happen? Well, first of all, we've got a pot down there that is, it's about this big around, and it would have a handle on it, and it would hang. And more than likely, for breakfast, you could cook cornmeal mush in that, or if you're thinking about dinner, which they called their noon meal, perhaps a stew could be cooked in there. And I can see that it's about time for you all to leave and move on. And I certainly do appreciate you coming, and hope that you will come back to Marble Springs again, because there's so much to see here, and it's so much fun to be here.
Now that you've learned a little bit of what life was like here at Marble Springs, let's hear it from the man himself. Let me introduce you to John Sevier.
Welcome to the cabin. Come on in. Have a seat. It's good to see you. Hope you're doing well today. I'll introduce myself. I am John Sevier. It's a pleasure to have you come and visit with me. Thank you for coming. Tell you a little about myself. I was born in Northern Virginia, September 23rd, 1745. In my day, most people did not have the opportunity to get an education. I was very fortunate that my parents believed very strongly in education, and so I was able to attend the Old Field School near our home. And after I had completed my education at the Old Field School, they allowed me to go away to Staunton, Virginia, to the academy there. In 1796, this became the state of Tennessee. And in March of that year, I was elected to serve as the first governor of the state of Tennessee. I continued to hold that post for 6 intermittent terms.
Well, thank you for joining us for our virtual Statehood Day. We hope to see you very soon in person at Marble Springs State Historic Site.
While Blount Mansion was 18th century Knoxville's first stately home, it certainly wasn't the last. Let's go to East Knox County now and pay a visit to historic Ramsey House.
Hi, I'm Kelley Weatherley-Sinclair, the Executive Director of Historic Ramsey House. The historic Ramsey House was built in 1797 for Colonel Francis Alexander Ramsey by architect Thomas Hope. It's made entirely out of Tennessee pink marble and blue limestone, quarried just right in this area. It's very unusual for this area because most houses, of course, were built out of wood, log cabins that you might have, I'm sure, seen. And so this was considered the finest home in Tennessee. Let's go inside and take a look. Welcome to the Great Hall. This was a wonderful space for entertaining. The Ramseys were known for entertaining in their day, especially Mrs. Ramsey. They were very welcoming, and so this is where you would have seen a lot of things happening. Not only dinners at a table very similar to this one, but also dances or meetings or even a Sunday service. Now, there are some interesting things in this room that we like to point out. One of them being, this is the first time you really notice how grand this house is. These windowsills right here reflect the 18-inch thick solid pink marble walls that make up this house. And also these beautiful shutters that shut from the inside. And those shutters are not only decorative, but they also help keep heat out or heat in and also serve as a defense mechanism if need be. Now, Colonel Ramsey would have had finer things to entertain his guests with, such as a tea set like this, and would have had tea imported and in a tea chest under lock and key. We also know that they did have china. He imported china. So they would have had china very similar to this here. We also know that he had two maps, one of Scotland and one of Ireland, to honor his Scotch-Irish heritage. Now, the coolest thing that I just want to show you here is actually these documents. These are original documents that were written and signed by Colonel Ramsey himself. Now, Colonel Ramsey was a clerk of the Superior Court, and these documents are court summons that he actually wrote himself. And you can see his signature actually on these two here. Very, very fancy signature with 6 loops in the Y, which is really fun, I think. You'll notice this one here is actually from before Tennessee was a state, from the territory south of the Ohio in 1794. And then these are from Tennessee. So just some very exciting documents that we actually still have. They're fascinating to read and wonderful to a wonderful piece of our early state's history. Welcome to the parlor. The parlor, much like the Great Hall, was a great entertainment space, but a little more casual, kind of like your living room today. We have some beautiful objects that help tell the Ramsey story in here that are actually original to the family. These chairs are Chippendale chairs that were given to Colonel Ramsey and his first wife, Peggy Alexander. They are a beautiful Chippendale chair that were created in the Piedmont area, we think in Virginia or North Carolina. Another beautiful artifact that we have in the collection is this tea set right here. It's actually a silver tea set that was made in Philadelphia in 1817 and was given to J.G.M. Ramsey, Colonel Ramsey's eldest son, when he married Margaret Crozier. The tea set actually features very patriotic motifs, such as this beautiful bald eagle head on the spout. The last thing we'll talk about in this room is the beautiful secretary. While it's not the original secretary, it is much like the one that Colonel Ramsey would have had in his office. This is also where he would have kept all of his books, important documents, written letters, etc. Here at Historic Ramsey House, we have a beautiful central staircase that has beautifully carved scrolls, originally done by Thomas Hope. Now, what's interesting is that this railing was actually about 7 inches shorter than you see today, and that's because we had to raise it due to modern safety codes. Welcome to the children's bedchamber. This, of course, is a bedroom. This is where the Ramsey children would have slept. They also would have done school lessons up here, played games, and also eaten their meals up here until they were well-mannered enough to eat downstairs in the Great Hall. You'll see some beautiful beds in here. They're all rope beds, so of course you need to tighten up your rope bed before you jumped in at night so it wouldn't sag. And these beds are also nice and high off of the ground, so you can fit things like trunks, chamber pots for those late night potty breaks, and also maybe even a trundle bed for extra sleeping space. Now, some ways you might keep warm in a room like this while you're cozying up under the covers is, of course, a fireplace. Might have noticed there's a fireplace in each room, so you keep a fire going. You also have different things like this bed warmer here, where you scoop hot coals in, put the cover on, and rub it between the blankets before you hopped in. There's also a foot stove. Again, put those hot coals in, shut the door, and you have a nice roasty stove like a space heater. They also have what we call a soapstone. This right here is you stick it directly into the fire and let it heat up, wrap it with a rag, and take it on a carriage ride, put it next to your feet to keep warm. And of course, in the summer, there's no air conditioning, so you would just have to open up the windows. Another great thing in this room that we've highlighted is this original sampler. This sampler was actually done by Eliza Jane Ramsey, Colonel Ramsey's only daughter. The sampler records the births of her family members and also one of her favorite hymns. So be sure to check that one out when you come in person. Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual Statehood Day tour. This is just a small taste of all the many things you can enjoy here at Historic Ramsey House, and we hope that you'll come for a physical visit when it's safe to do so. Happy Statehood Day. Thank you.
Now we'll skip ahead to the mid-19th century for a visit to Mabry-Hazen House, a Civil War era mansion with an incredible view of downtown Knoxville.
Hi, I'm Patrick Hollis, Executive Director of Mabry-Hazen House, and welcome to Mabry Hill. This home was built in 1858 and is one of the last remaining Italianate structures in Knoxville, Tennessee. For 3 generations, the Mabry and Hazen family resided within this home, and because of that continuity, nearly every object in the house is an original family piece, making it one of the largest original collections in the United States. So let's go inside and check out Mabry-Hazen House. We're walking into the formal parlor of the Mabry-Hazen family. And as we zoom around here, nearly every object you see in this room, and the house as well, belonged either to a Mabry or Hazen family member. Because of that, we have nearly 7,000 objects in our collection, making it one of the largest in the United States. The Mabrys were quite well connected here in Knoxville, and when this home was built in 1858, Joseph Mabry was what we probably call a venture capitalist. He had his hands in the railroad. He was a land speculator and real estate developer, including making a major contribution to Knoxville when in 1853, Mabry and his brother-in-law donated the land for Market Square. Mabry would have a rather agile career hopping between these various ventures, but eventually would settle here in this home in the 1860s, early 1870s. During that time, he was also making a big contribution to the state of Tennessee. In 1869, Joseph Mabry was elected as a delegate for Knox County to the Constitutional Convention. As we can see from this Constitutional Convention book published in the 1870s, Joseph Mabry's name is listed here. Although Mabry was elected to voice the opinions and decisions of Knox County, he mainly dealt with issues of the railroad during the Constitutional Convention. As the owner of the Knoxville and Kentucky Railroad, Mabry sought to benefit not only the industry, but also himself. Years later, investigations would uncover Mabry had actually bribed several delegates during the convention, mostly through liquor, but also through the promise of a bespoke suit. Now, this eventually would lead to Mabry's downfall. His railroad would go into receivership, a form of bankruptcy, and start a series of financial setbacks that eventually culminated in the infamous gunfight on Gay Street in October of 1882. Mabry, his eldest son, and rival Thomas O'Connor would all be shot and killed in the middle of the day right on Gay Street in 1882. Although we don't have many objects pertaining either to the gunfight or to Mabry's tenure during the Constitutional Convention, we do have an abundance of other fine artifacts and pieces within the collection, including this 1790 to 1820 Federal style writing desk. Now, this writing desk is made of mahogany and is an excellent example of the Federal aesthetic. It's simple, it's symmetrical, and there's also a bit of symbolism built into it. Counting the number of panes in each door, you'll see that there are 13 to represent the 13 original colonies. Besides the original family collection, this house is filled with colorful stories about the history of Knoxville and the Mabry-Hazen family. And those stories are filled with colorful characters, few as illustrative as Joseph Mabry himself. This portrait, painted in the mid-1850s by Samuel Shaver, and when this portrait was actually painted, this house likely had just been built. Now, this Italianate structure features 4 parlors on the main floor here, a central open passageway, and 4 bedrooms upstairs. And let's go check one out. Beyond the space this home afforded for the family, it also was designed for comfort. This stairwell helps move air throughout the house, and it's also architecturally distinct. These split landing staircases were not really a design you would see come into Victorian homes until the 1870s, 1880s. And one of the unique opportunities at Mabry-Hazen House is the ability to talk about different eras and time periods. For example, many of our rooms upstairs actually are not Victorian, like this room here. Most of the furnishings and objects within this room date to the 1900s and Evelyn Hazen, another famous family member. But you'll have to come visit the house to learn her story. Now, let's head outside and take a look at Mabry Hill and the vista it provides of downtown Knoxville. Wow, what a spectacular view of downtown Knoxville. 150 years later, you can see why the Mabrys chose to build their house upon this hill, but also why the Union and Confederate armies decided to use this position for defensive reasons. During a typical statehood day, you'd visit our site and see costume interpreters in long gowns, hoop skirts, and in Civil War uniforms. In fact, we typically do black powder demonstrations, and we're going to let you see one virtually today. But we hope you'll join us next year and come and see our great Knoxville treasure and learn a little bit more about Knoxville's history.
Ready, aim, fire!
The last museum in our program today is Historic Westwood, an ornate Victorian mansion on Kingston Pike that is just full of architectural surprises.
All right, welcome to Historic Westwood. This beautiful home was built in 1890 in a mixture of the Queen Anne and Richardson Romanesque styles of architecture. But there's something that's very special about this home, and I want to take you inside and share that with you. Well, this is the space that makes Historic Westwood so special. This home was built for John Lutz and his wife Anne Adelia Armstrong Lutz, and Anne came from one of Knoxville's most prominent families. The Armstrongs were among the earliest settlers in the community, and her grandfather built Crescent Bend, which is nearby, and her father, Robert Armstrong, built Bleak House. We're so fortunate here in Knoxville to have 3 generations of family homes within such close proximity to one another that are all open to the public and available to be experienced by people. But Adelia was an artist. She studied throughout the United States and even in Europe, and she became known as Tennessee's first professional female painter. So when this home was designed, it was designed to have a beautiful artist studio as part of the original floor plan and design of the house. And that's the space that we're in right now, with the cathedral ceilings and the beautiful wall colors. Red was one of her favorite colors, and she said, apparently, that paintings did better against red. So you could put a variety of subject matters against red, and it would complement it very well. If you'd come to visit Adelia back in probably around 1895 or so, this is what you would have seen. This is Adelia in her studio, painting at her easel. We still have her table that you see in the photograph. It's now our dining room table. And this is the room where Adelia would teach her students often. She also taught downtown in a studio. This is where they would welcome their closest friends and family, and where she would share her artwork with the community. Adelia was part of the Nicholson Art League, and they were a very prominent collection of artists in the late 1800s and early 1900s here in Knoxville. It's obvious when you come and visit Historic Westwood how much Adelia loved the arts, poetry, literature, and it's shown in the things that she's done in this house. There are touches of her artwork as well as touches of the things she loves throughout the home. For example, here we have the beautiful fireplace in the studio, and Adelia hand-painted all the tiles with portraits of her favorite authors and writers. Now, most of these have burned off over the years, but you can see one that's particularly prominent. That is William Makepeace Thackeray. All of these were hard-working, coal-burning fireplaces, and they're lovely because they're all custom designed. Adelia played an important role in helping to design even the fireplace mantles in the home. But as you look around this room, you'll see examples of her artwork, which fall into three main categories. When Adelia started, she started recreating masterworks by famous painters. So when you look at a painting like this, you'll see the name of the original painter with Adelia's name following it. She studied at the Corcoran Gallery in Washington, D.C., and also at the Philadelphia School of Fine Arts, and that's where she started picking up some of these techniques for her paintings. Later on, she moved into more family portraits and also a lot of flowers. She loved flowers. So as you look around this room, you'll see two family portraits on our west wall. To the left, this is her grandfather, Drury Payne Armstrong, and to the right is her father, Robert Armstrong. And in the middle, we have a lovely painting of hollyhocks. And if you drive by Westwood at the right time of year, you'll see these beautiful hollyhock flowers in bloom along the front wall. She also painted all of her family members. So one of my favorite paintings is a portrait of her son, Ned, when he was 5 years old with his dog. This is entitled Confidence. And I think that's a lovely picture of him by the seashore. So Historic Westwood was in the same family for several generations, and over the years this room moved from being an art studio into a library, and even at one time a billiard room. And we have artifacts from every generation of the family here, and I think it's just wonderful that you can come in, you can see the signatures of Adelia in her books, you can see the signature of her grandfather in his books. So we have about 6 generations of family books in this room right now. And it's such a treasure to go through and see the kind of things that they were interested in and to learn a little bit more about them. One of the things that I love about this room is the skylight. Can you imagine from 1890 having a beautiful room like this with a partial glass ceiling? This is original to the home, as well as all of the stained glass that you see in the home. And it's just one of the many features that have been able to be retained throughout the years. So one of the things that has happened lately is that we've had more and more artwork coming into the home and things that we can display for the community's enjoyment. One of my favorites are these beautiful slag glass lamps. They're from the John and Nancy Coates collection, and each one is a work of art unto itself. We have 10 of these lamps on display at Westwood, and they revolve. So periodically throughout the year, John and Nancy will come in and they will change the lights, and it depends on the season. So if it's dogwood season, we may have a lamp with dogwoods in it, and as we move towards the fall, we'll see more lamps with leaves. Well, just off the main studio is the sunroom, which was also used as a breakfast room and an alternative painting studio for Adelia. One of the things that's happened at Westwood, which we're so excited about, is that the home has become a repository for several female artists. This started when we had this beautiful painting donated to us by the Ray family in honor of their daughter, Andy. This is by Cynthia Markert, who is a Knoxville artist who graduated from the University of Tennessee, and it's entitled The Letting Go. A couple of other female artists are on display here in the formal parlor of the house. These two paintings are by Eugenia Doolin. So if you remember the Doolin Art Gallery here in Knoxville, which gave birth to the KMA. And then also this clock, which is our most recent addition. This clock was hand carved out of white oak and smoke to create that dark effect by Ellen Van Gilder. If you remember the Van Gilder Glass Company here in Knoxville. Ellen actually ran around in the Nicholson Art League circles. So it all ties back to the early history of this house, and we're so delighted to have that here. In fact, one of the things about Westwood that I just love is how much artistry is on display. So you would have not seen solid painted walls in this house. Everything would have had beautifully painted frescoes. We've uncovered quite a bit, but this is the informal parlor of the house, and this is the only room that has had its frescoes fully restored. These were designed by, in collaboration, it was Adelia and Mortimer Thompson, who also did work at the Tennessee Theater. And in 2014, we had an artist from Asheville, North Carolina, come and spend several months actually recreating a template on the design and restoring the ceilings and this entire room, and we just really enjoy this. I hope you've enjoyed this virtual experience of Historic Westwood. We are open for tours. We have docent-led tours Tuesdays through Thursdays from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. and we always love sharing this house with the community. We're also open for private events and have a lot of events that take place here, including educational programming and other special events. So check us out at historicwestwood.org.
Hi, I'm David Hearnes, Executive Director of Blount Mansion. We hope you've enjoyed our virtual Statehood Day celebration, and we also hope you'll take the chance to come and see us in person soon. There's just no substitute for seeing these beautiful historic homes for yourself. Here at Blount Mansion, the birthplace of Tennessee, we have a special connection to the story of the founding of our great state. We want Tennesseans, especially East Tennesseans, to be proud of the role that Knoxville played in the founding of the state of Tennessee. Next year's Statehood Day promises to be even bigger. We have an important milestone coming up, the 225th anniversary of the founding of the state of Tennessee. Stay tuned for all the details of what Historic Homes of Knoxville has planned.
Thank you for joining us for this virtual Statehood Day celebration. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, you can learn more on our website, www.hhknoxville.org, and on our Facebook page. We do hope you'll come and visit us in person as our museums continue to open in coming weeks, and you might consider purchasing one of our multi-site passes. It offers a single admission to each of our 7 museums for one low price. We do look forward to seeing you. Until then, let me join our other museums and wish you Happy Statehood Day from the Historic Homes of Knoxville.
Happy Statehood Day from Historic Homes of Knoxville.
Happy Statehood Day from all the historical homes of Knoxville.
Happy Statehood Day from the Historic Homes of Knoxville.
Happy Statehood Day from the Historic Homes of Knoxville.
Happy Statehood Day from the Historic Homes of Knoxville.
Happy Statehood Day from Historic Homes of Knoxville.